Hello everyone, I'm your cruise director Kristen, and it's good to be here. Today we're headed to Strawberry Square, a property in the heart of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania that is currently used as a mixed-use commercial property and downtown social hub. The name Strawberry Square comes from Strawberry Alley, which existed where the property was built. When the area was settled, it was common to name streets after trees, flowers, and fruit, and Harrisburg was no exception. They also have nectarine, mulberry, pear, and dewberry streets, as well as cranberry and plum alleys. Harrisburg also drops a giant illuminated strawberry above the Hilton Hotel a block away on New Year's. Harrisburg loves them some fruit. Although you gotta admit, Strawberry Square sounds like some kind of on-the-go breakfast item intended to go in your toaster. Strawberry Squares, new from the folks at Nutri-Grain. Anyway, the entire Strawberry Square complex consists of about 1.4 million square feet of office, residential, and retail. The publicly accessible retail portion is about 117,000 square feet and has never had a traditional department store anchor. When Strawberry Square was built, downtown Harrisburg was home to two department stores, Pomeroy's and Ballman's, and they didn't want to take business away from those established brands. Harrisburg actually has kind of a lot of malls for the size it is. The Harrisburg-Carlisle Metro has a population of about 600,000 people, and at their peak in the vicinity, they had about 6 malls if you include Strawberry Square. They currently have 5 operating. Just for comparison, let's use a small city like Dayton, Ohio as another example. They're both small Rust Belt cities, and Dayton had 3 malls at its peak and now has 2. Over the next few episodes, we're going to be discussing how these malls related to each other when we cover the other malls in Harrisburg, so you may want to subscribe if that sounds like something you'd be into. But just to kind of set the scene here, Harrisburg's first mall was Lebanon Valley Mall and opened in 1960, followed by the Point at Carlisle Plaza in 1964. By 1965, the population shift to the suburbs was causing downtown to empty, and the city wanted to create a new, exciting attraction that would draw people back into downtown, especially on the weekends. The blocks surrounding Strawberry Square have been a center of commerce and retail since as far back as 1826, when vendors would set up in Strawberry Alley to peddle their wares in the open air. In 1873, the Grand Opera House was built and would remain until February 1907, when it burned down and took many of the other buildings adjacent to it with it. In 1919, the Penn Harris Hotel was at this location and remained successful until the 1950s. The hotel closed in 1969 and was demolished in 1973 following a flood the year before that rendered the structure unsalvageable. The funding was secured and ground was broken on Phase 1 of Strawberry Square in 1976. By 1978, the 2 office tenants that were considered anchors of the project were confirmed to be Bell of Pennsylvania and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. In 1976, you couldn't get more secure, stable tenants than the Bell system and the state government. Over the next 2 years, they got to work securing smaller inline tenants to occupy the mall. By 1979, the mall portion was only about 25% leased, and the developers were accused of being too choosy. Reading their reasoning, I don't know that that's an unfair observation. The leasing agent is quoted as saying he was overly concerned with not allowing tenants that would attract an undesirable element. One of the rejected tenants was a barbershop, which they rejected, saying they were looking for an upscale women's hair salon instead. Now, the article doesn't elaborate beyond that, and it's not really my place to speculate, but to me, it sounds like there's something written between the lines there, and I'll leave it up to you whether you agree with me or not. Additionally, downtown business owners who were displaced by the new construction were also upset because they hoped that in exchange for agreeing to vacate, they would be offered sweetheart lease deals at Strawberry Square. Instead, many of them felt squeezed by the high rents and couldn't afford to open there. It was about now I started focusing on nailing down a grand opening date, and across various initial articles, I was getting dates anywhere from 1978 to 1981. The mall actually held 2 grand openings, one for the Great International Food Court that took place the weekend of March 14th, 1980, and the grand opening for the entire property was held on Wednesday, November 12th, 1980. When it opened, it was pretty standard mall offerings. They had a B. Dalton bookstore, Connie shoes, record stores, and probably some kind of knick-knack and card shop that almost certainly smelled like headachy potpourri and envelope glue. The initial development was an entirely new build from the ground up that was built with the common areas tracing the former Strawberry Alley. There were no historical elements from the old buildings incorporated into Phase 1. The second phase would have a new plan that included restoring the facades of several adjacent historical buildings and enclosing the alleys between them, giving the property a sort of indoors but outdoors vibe, and I gotta say it's really cool to walk around in here. I was here in October and it was pretty cold, but with those skylights over the alleys, it felt like you were outside on a warm day. It was nice. Plans for Phase 2 began in 1987. By now, we were thoroughly in the golden era of the mall, and Strawberry Square wanted more traditional mall tenants. The initial 29 tenants from 1980 were mostly one-of-a-kind, with about 25% national chains. Downtown was going to be getting a new hotel a block away, so it was time to really make the mall something everyone could enjoy. So they began advertising for new tenants. And their slogan to entice new tenants was a bold choice, let's say. An odd choice. And it was as follows. Now that there's more strawberry, we're looking for a little cream.
Like, gross me out the door.
It is the opinion of this filmmaker that all businesses need to read their slogan to a 13-year-old boy, and if he starts chortling like an idiot, that's not the one to go with. Phase 2, all in all, added 35 new stores and 60,000 square feet of retail space and opened on May 1st, 1989. This was quoted in the grand opening announcement in the paper. They were also seeking a movie theater, something that doesn't appear to have ever actually gone in a nightclub. Both of these things make sense. The entire point of Strawberry Square in the beginning was to try to get people to come back downtown in the evening and on the weekends to have fun, so those would have both been great additions. This period unfortunately didn't really go as they planned. We entered a recession in 1990, but the signs were there already. By the end of 1990, it was reported that the mall portion of Strawberry Square had 35 tenants, 17 of which were part of the original 29. They added 35 new stores in May 1989 when Phase 2 opened, so doing the math, they basically lost about 17 tenants in a little over 18 months. Not good. A new feature in the central atrium was an art installation by George Rhodes called the Chock-a-Block Clock. It was a large clock that had a kinetic sculpture inside that billiard balls would travel like a Rube Goldberg machine. Now, if you're one of the old school Unicom viewers who remembers the one at Forest Fair Mall in the 90s, it was the same artist. He was probably most active in the late 80s and early 90s and did quite a few of these public art pieces. Now, if you want to see what that clock looked like, Dan Bell and Ray Out There are both creators who have released videos on this property, and they were here before they took it out last year. It was replaced with the weird yellow elevated conference room you see in the middle, and for whatever reason, it reminds me of a huge old TV. In 1995, an article was run complaining that the Strawberry Square complex was having an identity crisis in which it was both a mall and an office building and apartments. Now, if we were hearing this in 2025, we would be applauding them for their innovative forward thinking and future-proofing themselves against the potential devastation in the retail industry. Perhaps they weren't having an identity crisis. Perhaps they were just ahead of their time. In 1999, Strawberry Arcade, which is the enclosed skywalk that connects Strawberry Square to the Hilton Hotel a block away, was remodeled in anticipation of a new science and technology museum downtown. It's still open, and I used it to get back to my car so I didn't have to travel the staircase of doom again. As of right now, the mall's stated strategy is to focus on meds, eds, and beds, which is their cute way of saying they want medical, education, and residential. However, the addition of the stage in the middle means they still want the community to come in and enjoy themselves. About 10 minutes after I filmed this food court, a large crowd of probably 100 teenagers came in with name tags. This was a Saturday, so I'm guessing some kind of academic competition. The thing is, the food court is so old school, and seeing it filled with teenagers on a Saturday afternoon is just really heartwarming. The more we change, the more we stay the same, and everybody just wants tacos with their friends. It's nice to have a place to go have tacos with your friends.